My dad stole my restored '67 Impala to pay off my brother's gambling debt. I filed felony charges. Hi, I'm Nate, 34, and 5 days ago, I called the cops on my own father for grand theft auto. I stood in the doorway of my detached garage, staring into a vacuum. The overhead door had just creaked open, sunlight flooding across oil-stained concrete and an emptiness that hit harder than any punch I'd ever taken. My 1967 Chevy Impala SS, gone. Midnight black, chrome gleaming, 427 under the hood, 4-speed Muncie I rebuilt with my own hands. Vanished. At first, I blinked like a dumb animal. Maybe I parked it in the driveway? Maybe it was at the paint shop again. No. I hadn't moved it in days. I could still smell the fuel stabilizer and armor all I'd wiped across the dash last weekend. Then I saw them, thin drag marks, fresh, arcing from the back of the garage to the front. Somebody had winched it out. My phone buzzed. Dad, Nate, come to the house. We need to talk. Now. My stomach bottomed out. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I got in my daily driver, an '08 Tacoma with 280k and duct tape holding the side mirror, and drove 4 miles through dead yellow fall fields to the house I grew up in. The house that used to smell like cinnamon rolls and now just smelled like stress. Mom was sitting on the couch, eyes red, twisting a tissue like it owed her money. My younger brother, Jake, was pacing like a raccoon on a hot sidewalk. And Dad, he was in the recliner. Arms crossed. Calm. Like the storm hadn't even begun yet. Where is it? I asked. Dad didn't hesitate. I sold it. Just like that. No build-up. No apology. Like he was telling me he got groceries. You sold it? My mouth tasted like rust. You sold my Impala? You left the title in your gun safe, Dad said. We had it opened by a locksmith. Jake looked down at his shoes. I couldn't speak for a full 10 seconds. That's breaking and entering. You stole my car. Dad stood up, took 2 steps forward. Jake was in real danger. He was deep into online blackjack, owed $38,000. The guy he borrowed from sent a picture of his apartment door, then a picture of his girlfriend's. They knew where she lived, Nate. We didn't have a choice. Mom chimed in weakly. It was a family decision. We liquidated a family asset to protect family. That wasn't a family asset. That was mine. I bought it. I built it. You think a car just grows in a garage like tomatoes? I put 5 years and $50,000 into that Impala. I pulled that engine from a junkyard in Arizona with a cherry picker and a hangover. Dad didn't flinch. We got $40,000. Paid the debt in full. That's when I lost it. It was worth $70,000. At auction, it could have brought 80. Jake finally looked up. Thanks, man. I swear I'll pay you back once my NFT project launches again. I turned and walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. Dad shouted after me. You walk away like this, don't come back for Thanksgiving. I didn't walk. I drove straight to the sheriff's office. Deputy Ramirez looked at me like I just said my dog robbed a bank. You're telling me your father broke into your house, forged your name, and sold your car? Yes. And your brother helped? He's the one who blurted out they used a locksmith. So yeah? Ramirez whistled low and slow, like the opening to a western shootout. That's ballsy. I want to file a report. Grand theft auto. Forgery. Breaking and entering. All of it. He hesitated. Nate, this isn't just a car thing. This is gonna rip your family in half. They already did that when they touched my safe. He nodded and started typing. I couldn't sleep that night. Not even close. I laid in bed replaying every second of the last 5 years. Late nights under LED shop lights, rusted bolts snapping off in my hands, weekends spent hunting rare trim pieces at swap meets, saving every spare dollar while friends took vacations. That Impala was more than a car. It was therapy. My therapist had actually said that. You've built a sense of control through that restoration project. No kidding. By morning, I had one goal: find the buyer before the car disappeared into a shipping container or some collector's vault. I started with the obvious. If Dad sold it for $40,000 fast, it was either a wholesaler or one of those shady backlit flippers. I checked Facebook Marketplace. Craigslist. OfferUp. Nothing. Then I hit up the Chevy Restos forum. I posted everything: VIN, plates, photo of the car, even my story. Stolen, 1967 Impala SS, midnight black, VIN ending in 4591, taken and sold by family in Fort Collins, Colorado. Possibly sold October 21st. Reward for info. Within 4 hours, I had 3 DMs. One from a guy named Chevichez who said he saw a black 67 Impala being unloaded in the back lot of a place called Mile High Classic Motors, down in Aurora. I looked them up. Yup. Known for fast flips. Reviews were a mix of great deal and they sold me a fake title. I didn't call ahead. I drove. 2 hours later, I pulled into their gravel lot, heart pounding. It was like stepping into a graveyard of forgotten muscle, half-finished Camaros, primer gray Novas, a Firebird with no hood. And there it was. My car. Sitting beside a half-built Cuda. Even with the dust, it gleamed. Midnight black, chrome bumpers still polished like a mirror. But the plates were gone. A for sale tag hung crooked in the window. I walked right into the office. The guy behind the desk wore a backwards ball cap, gold pinky ring, and an expression that screamed sketchy. Can I help you? Yeah, I said. That Impala outside? That's mine. He raised a brow. It was yours. Now it's mine. Bought it fair and square. Signed title and everything. No, you didn't. That title was forged. That car was stolen from me, by my own family. I filed a police report yesterday. He leaned back. So sue them. I'm a good faith buyer. You got proof? I've got the VIN. The original title. The police report. And your dealership is about to be holding felony property. That got him to flinch. He stood. Wait here. 10 minutes later, he came back with a new man. Older. Glasses. Smelled like burnt cigars and Axe body spray. You Nate? He asked. Yeah. You can have the car back. He said just like that. We don't want the heat. We'll eat the loss. My head was spinning. What did you pay? 40 flat. We were gonna list it for 60. I stared at him. You're just giving it back? No. I'm handing it over to the sheriff's department. Let them sort it. If your story checks out, it's yours again. But you better get a lawyer, son. Because that car's about to be the least messy part of this. The sheriff's office in Arapahoe County confirmed everything the next day. The dealership voluntarily surrendered the Impala, the forged title was logged as evidence, and I got to sit down with the deputy overseeing the case, Sergeant Lanning, mid-50s, cop haircut, zero time for nonsense. You're lucky, he said, flipping through the report. Most stolen classic cars vanish into Mexico or Eastern Europe before the ink dries. He looked up. You want to press full charges? Yes. Even on your old man? Especially on him. He nodded like he respected the answer but didn't envy the fallout. The Impala was taken to an evidence yard. I couldn't drive it home yet, not until the ownership was officially returned. I had to sit across the chain-link fence and stare at it like it was in car jail. It felt like visiting a friend in a coma, still beautiful, but stuck. That night, my phone blew up again. Jake. Dad. Mom. Even my Aunt Denise, who hadn't spoken to me since I skipped her third wedding. Jake. Bro, please call me. I didn't know it was that big a deal. Dad. Nate, we need to talk. You're being unreasonable. Mom. You're breaking this family apart. Over a car. I ignored them all. But then they switched tactics. I was out in the garage changing the oil in the Tacoma when I heard tires in the driveway. I wiped my hands, stepped outside, and froze. It was Claire. My ex-fiancée. She hadn't been back to my house in 2 years. Not since she left me with the ring and the deposit paperwork for our cancelled wedding venue. She stepped out of her Lexus, long coat, hair perfect. Looked like she was on her way to a fundraiser or a real estate showing. What are you doing here? I asked. She didn't flinch. Your mom asked me to come. I actually laughed. You're joking. She said you wouldn't listen to them. That maybe you'd listen to someone you used to love. I leaned against the garage frame, arms crossed. Let me guess. I'm overreacting. I should drop the charges. Kyle's just a troubled soul. Her face softened. Nate, you know how your family is. They do dumb things. But at the end of the day, they're still your blood. I stared at her. Do you know what my dad said to me the day he sold the Impala? Sometimes the strong have to sacrifice for the weak. You remember that line? She hesitated. I remember. Yeah. He used that line on you, too? When you wanted to take that job in San Diego, and he said no daughter-in-law of his would abandon family. She looked down. Quiet. He's never wanted strong people around him. I said. He wants obedient people. Kyle screws up and gets rescued. I build something and get robbed. She looked up again, eyes glassy. You've changed. No. I said. I just stopped pretending they hadn't. Claire nodded once. Then got back in her car. As she pulled away, I realized something. This wasn't just about the Impala anymore. This was the end of the version of me who kept sacrificing for people who only saw me as a safety net. And it was time for a reckoning. The charges hit like a bomb in a Baptist potluck. It started with a phone call to Dad's office. He was still doing part-time accounting work for a lumber supply company in Greeley. One minute he was reviewing invoices, the next he was being escorted out by 2 uniformed officers. Cuffed. Quiet. In front of the entire staff. Jake got picked up the same afternoon at a vape shop, holding a protein shake and a pack of Sour Patch Kids. I didn't know whether to laugh or throw up. The news traveled fast. Uncle Dave texted me just 3 words. Is this true? My cousin Paige unfollowed me on Instagram. Someone posted a thread on the local Facebook community group titled, "Who presses charges on their own father?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. But someone else did. Elias Thorne. I'd hired him 2 weeks earlier when the dealership drama started. Property lawyer, slicker than a waxed Cadillac, and allergic to subtlety. The man wore cufflinks to court in Larimer County like he was walking into a Senate hearing. And now he was calling me every day with updates. Your father's arraignment is next Thursday. I've already sent subpoenas for the locksmith and the dealership. Jake's going to try to pin the whole thing on your dad. Just FYI. Your mom hired an attorney. Probably trying to spin a family mediation narrative. We're not playing that game. And then came the kicker. The forged title? I had a handwriting analyst confirm it. It's laughably fake. The DMV official who processed it already admitted under oath that she flagged it but was overruled by her supervisor. That's internal fire. The state's pissed. Dad was facing felony theft over $20,000. Forgery. Breaking and entering. Conspiracy to defraud. Jake? Charged as an accessory after the fact. Mom? Not criminally implicated, but the DA made it clear, any tampering or attempted interference, and she'd be pulled in too. The next Saturday, I was in my garage cleaning the carburetor on my daily driver when I heard a knock. I opened the side door and there stood Gramps. Mom's dad. 81. Still drove a '79 C10 and chewed gum like it owed him rent. The man used to rebuild Harley engines in his shed during retirement. We hadn't talked much in years. You got a minute, kid? Sure. He walked in like he owned the place. Looked around. Whistled low. You kept the red tool chest, he said, nodding at the old Craftsman he'd given me at 16. Still works, I said. He turned and looked me square in the eye. Don't back down. I blinked. What? I heard the talk. Your mother's crying at church. Your dad's telling people it was all a big misunderstanding. And half the family's acting like you killed the Pope. I stayed quiet. But I know what they did. I know your dad. Hell, I warned your mom back in '85 that he was a selfish son of a bitch. You don't take a man's work. You don't steal his pride. I nodded. My throat felt tight. Gramps clapped me on the shoulder. You ain't burning bridges, boy. You're building a firewall. He left after 10 minutes. Didn't offer help. Didn't offer money. Just that single, solid sentence. You're building a firewall. That night I didn't sleep. But I didn't toss and turn either. I sat at my desk with the Impala's original maintenance log, thumbing through the pages. I'd thought it was just a car. Turns out, it was proof that I mattered. And now the people who tried to erase that? They were about to answer for it. Court day. I parked in the back lot of the Larimer County Justice Center and just sat in the truck for a while, engine ticking, heater blowing lukewarm air, hands wrapped around the coffee I couldn't taste. Inside, Dad was being arraigned. Elias had told me not to show up. We've already filed victim impact statements. It's all procedural today. You don't need to see it. But I needed to see it. I walked in 5 minutes late, slid into the back row just as the bailiff called his name. Richard Allen Morgan. Dad stood at the defense table in a suit I hadn't seen since my high school graduation. His face looked drawn, like he hadn't slept. Mom sat behind him, jaw clenched, her nails sunk into the arm of the pew. Jake was nowhere to be seen. The judge ran through the charges. Dad pled not guilty. His lawyer tried to argue. Familial asset misunderstanding. Which was legal speak for we're going to throw as much fog at the court as possible and pray the DA settles. Then something happened. The judge turned to ask the DA a question, and Dad, thinking no one was looking, rolled his eyes. That tiny gesture lit a fuse in me. Because it wasn't just disrespect, it was contempt. Contempt for the court. Contempt for me. This wasn't a guy who was sorry. This was a guy annoyed that he got caught. Outside the courtroom, I ran into someone unexpected. Jake. He looked rough. Hoodie over his head, dark bags under his eyes, twitchy like he hadn't slept in days. The poker-face confidence he'd always carried like a shield was gone. You happy now? He asked, voice low. I'm not anything, I said. I'm just here. He nodded slowly, then pulled a folded sheet of paper from his pocket. I'm cutting a deal with the DA. Testifying against Dad. That caught me off guard. Why? Because I finally realized something, Nate. He laughed, bitter. Dad doesn't protect anyone. He just uses us. He told me we were in it together, but the second the heat came, he told his lawyer it was my idea. Said I pressured him. I shook my head. And you believed he wouldn't? Jake looked like he'd aged 10 years. I was stupid, he said. I was desperate. I thought if I could just fix it fast, I could stop disappointing everybody. He shoved the paper into my hand. What's this? My statement. Give it to your lawyer. I already gave the original to the DA, but I figured you should know. I opened it. Skimmed. Jake detailed everything, how he'd begged Dad to find a solution to his gambling debt, how Dad suggested using the car, how Mom cried but agreed, how they opened my safe, copied my signature off an old birthday card in the junk drawer, and sold the Impala while I was at work. It was all there. Every disgusting detail. You really think this helps? I asked. Jake didn't answer. He just walked away, hands in his hoodie pocket, disappearing into the courthouse crowd. Back in the truck, I sat for a long time with the paper in my lap. Somehow, seeing it in writing, seeing it all laid bare, was worse than hearing it. I wasn't just robbed. I was betrayed by 3 people who'd once sung me happy birthday off-key in this very town. But Jake's statement was the missing bullet in Elias's chamber. This case wasn't just solid. It was lethal now. And Dad? He had no idea the floor was already crumbling beneath him. 2 weeks later, I stood outside Elias Thorne's office, watching snow flurries blow sideways past the windows, when he called me in with the same grin he wore every time he had something nuclear to drop. Take a seat, he said, gesturing to the leather chair opposite his desk. Your father's lawyer tried to play chicken this morning. Claimed we were bluffing with the forgery charges. I raised an eyebrow. And? Elias reached into his folder and slid a glossy printout across the desk. That's a scan of a birthday card from 3 years ago. Happy 31st, love Mom and Dad. In the corner, my signature. And this? He slid a second paper next to it. Is the bill of sale your father submitted to the DMV. Signed, supposedly, by you. I didn't even need handwriting analysis. It was obvious. The signature was traced. Shaky. The kind of thing a 12-year-old does trying to excuse a forged permission slip. He copied your signature from a birthday card, Elias said, deadpan. A birthday card. Not even a clever one. This guy couldn't forge a pizza receipt. I stared at the papers, anger boiling again, but colder this time, cleaner. He's cooked, I said quietly. Medium rare, Elias replied. The DA's thrilled. We've got motive, method, and now a full-blown co-conspirator cooperating. We'll get restitution, but more importantly, we'll make sure this can never be spun as a family misunderstanding. This is fraud, pure and simple. He leaned back, hands laced behind his head. You ready for trial? I nodded. More than I've ever been ready for anything. But the universe has a sense of humor. Because that night, Mom showed up at my house again. In the snow. Wearing a pea coat, holding a grocery bag with 2 Tupperware containers. I opened the door. Didn't invite her in. I made beef stew, she said, holding out the bag like it was a peace treaty. Your favorite. With the carrots soft, not mushy. I didn't move. She sighed and set it on the porch rail. I just wanted to talk. Talk or manipulate? Her eyes flinched like I'd slapped her. Is that what you think I do? You let him do it. You helped him do it. You knew it was theft. You said it was a family decision like I was some teenager who left his bike in the yard. She looked down. I was scared. Of what? Me? Or the consequences of finally telling Dad no? Mom's voice cracked. I didn't know it would go this far. I stepped outside, shut the door behind me. The cold slapped both of us. You raised me to be honest. To work hard. To finish what I start. And when I finally built something I was proud of, you helped them steal it. I didn't steal anything, she said weakly. You signed off on it. You didn't stop it. That makes you guilty. She nodded slowly. He might go to jail. That's on him. She stepped closer. You still have the car back. You're safe. Jake's safe. Isn't that enough? I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so small. It wasn't about the car, I said. It was about respect. It was about finally being seen as more than the family handyman who could fix every crisis. She turned to leave. Paused halfway down the steps. Your dad still thinks you'll cave, she said quietly. That you'll drop the charges before trial. I stared at her. He's wrong. I walked back inside, locked the door, and put the Tupperware stew straight in the trash. The next morning, Elias filed a motion with the court. Victim seeks maximum sentencing and full restitution. No settlement offers accepted. We were going all the way. The trial date was set for mid-January. But word started leaking out before that, like gas through a cracked valve. Small-town courtrooms don't keep secrets. Neither do the people who sit in their pews every Sunday pretending they don't gossip. By Christmas, the whispers were everywhere. Did you hear? Nate Morgan's dad is up for felony theft. I heard he forged his own kid's name on a classic Chevy. No, it was just a misunderstanding. Families fight. Doesn't mean you throw em in jail. The lines were being drawn. People picked sides like it was a backyard football game. I didn't go to Christmas service. Couldn't stomach the idea of pretending nothing had happened while Dad shook hands and handed out butterscotch candies like he was some beloved grandpa instead of a felon with a court date. But on December 28th, the game changed. Elias called. You sitting down? I'm in the shop, I said, under the Tacoma, wrestling with a rusted tie rod. Well, sit anyway. I wiped my hands, slid out, sat on the cold concrete. Your father's lawyer just called. He wants a meeting. Not a settlement, a confession. I blinked. What? Apparently, Jake's testimony spooked him. So did the handwriting match. And now they know the DMV is launching an internal audit because of the forged title. It's a floodgate. Your father wants to make a deal before he's dragged down with the rest of it. What's the offer? Full confession in open court. No plea bargain. Accepts all charges. In exchange, we drop civil damages and agree not to pursue charges against your mom. I stood up so fast I cracked my head on the undercarriage. You're serious? As a heart attack. They're panicking. The judge is hard-nosed, and the DA's out for blood. He knows he's going to lose everything, Nate. His license. His pension. His freedom. He wants to salvage whatever dignity he's got left. I didn't say anything. You don't have to answer now, Elias added. But this puts the ball squarely in your court. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. The garage was quiet except for the ticking of the old shop heater and the occasional groan of metal cooling. The Impala, now legally mine again, was parked in the corner, under a soft cover. Untouched. Beautiful. Untouchable. Later that night, I found myself in a diner just outside town. Place called Miller's, where I used to come with Dad after baseball games. I sat in a booth with a greasy burger and a coffee going cold. I thought about the confession. The deal. What it would mean. It wouldn't erase what he did. Wouldn't unforge my name. Wouldn't give me back the trust he bulldozed like it was drywall. But it would mean something. It would mean he knew he was guilty. It would mean the town would hear it from his mouth, not mine. When the waitress came over to refill my coffee, she looked at me for a second too long. You're the one whose dad stole his car, right? I nodded. You were right to do it, she said quietly. If it were me, I'd have done worse. That sealed it. The next morning, Elias called the lawyer back. Tell Richard Morgan we accept the terms. Court was packed. Not just with press and attorneys and court clerks, but neighbors. Distant relatives. Guys Dad used to golf with. Women from Mom's Bible study who clutched their purses like they were shielding their hearts. Even the guy from the local auto parts store came, sat in the back row, arms folded like he was ready to throw hands if Dad pulled anything slick. And there was Dad, standing at the front in a navy blazer and khakis like he was being honored at a retirement luncheon, not confessing to felony theft. The judge gave him the floor. Mr. Morgan, you may address the court. He cleared his throat. Paper in hand. But his voice shook. My name is Richard Allen Morgan. I am 61 years old. And I am here today to confess to the theft of my son's vehicle, a 1967 Chevrolet Impala. A hush fell over the room like a dropped curtain. I broke into his home. I opened his personal safe without permission. I took possession of his vehicle title, forged his signature, and sold his car without his knowledge or consent. He paused. The paper shook in his hand. I did this because I believed I was protecting my younger son. But the truth is, I was protecting my own pride. My fear. My inability to face the reality that I had failed as a father in raising two very different men. He looked at me. Just once. Just for a second. But there was no defiance left in him. No smugness. Just a shell of someone who'd finally seen what he'd broken. I accept full responsibility for my actions. And I asked the court, and my son, for mercy. He sat down. You could have heard a pin drop. The judge nodded once. Let the record show that the defendant has confessed to all charges, with no contest. Sentencing will proceed next week. I stood to leave. People parted as I walked past, like I had gravity now. Like they finally understood what had really happened. Not a petty family squabble. Not a misunderstanding. A betrayal. One that had nearly cost me everything I'd built with my own hands. Outside the courthouse, I stood in the sun for a second, eyes closed, letting the cold air slap my face clean. Jake was waiting near the steps. Hoodie up. Hands shoved deep in his pockets. You heard it, I said. Yeah, he muttered. I didn't think he'd actually do it. Neither did I. We stood there in silence for a while. Then Jake pulled something out of his backpack. It was small. Wrapped in a shop towel. I found this in Dad's toolbox. Thought you might want it. I unfolded it. It was the original key to the Impala. The one I'd replaced with a custom billet fob last year. Stamped GM on one side. Still had the brass glint under the grime. Thanks, I said. Jake nodded. I'm leaving town. Heading west. Gonna stay with a buddy in Nevada for a while. Try to figure out who I am when I'm not being rescued. I nodded. That'd be good. You still hate me? I took a long breath. No, I said. I just don't trust you. Yet. He didn't argue. Just pulled his hood down lower and walked off down the street. I stood there a while longer. Then I drove home. Parked the Tacoma. Opened the garage. Pulled the cover off the Impala. And for the first time in months, I opened the door, sat behind the wheel, and turned the key. The 427 rumbled to life like it had been waiting. And for the first time since this all started, I smiled. 3 weeks passed. Dad was sentenced to 18 months probation, 500 hours of community service, and full restitution for the locksmith, legal fees, and storage of the Impala. He avoided prison, but the felony stuck. The courtroom was quiet when the judge handed it down, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see if lightning would strike. It didn't. But something did crack wide open after that. He lost his part-time accounting gig. Word got around. Even the local VFW distanced themselves. The man who used to lead charity BBQs and stand on stage with a mic, quoting Lincoln and lecturing on character, he was now the guy who forged his own kid's name over a car. Mom went quiet too. No more casseroles on the porch. No more phone calls from blocked numbers. Just silence. But silence wasn't peace. Peace was what I found under the hood. I started working on the Impala again. Not because it needed work, the thing ran like a dream, but because I needed to remind myself that what I built couldn't be unbuilt by someone else's fear or guilt or laziness. I changed the plugs. Rewired the dash lights. Replaced the aftermarket wheel with the original I'd found at a swap meet 6 years ago, and had kept boxed in a closet like some sacred relic. One night around 2 a.m. I was underneath the car tightening a bolt on the exhaust flange when I heard footsteps. My heart jumped. I rolled out, wrench in hand, half expecting Dad or Jake, or some drunk relative looking to make peace at the worst possible time. It wasn't any of them. It was Gramps. Again. This time he didn't knock. He just opened the side garage door like he owned the place and walked in carrying a folding chair and a 12-pack of Dr. Pepper. "Figured you'd be out here," he said, settling into the chair with a groan. "No better place to think than under a good car." I sat on the cold concrete, wiping my hands on a rag. "What's the verdict, then?" he asked. "He's a felon," I said flatly. "Can't vote. Can't hold a license in financial services. Might lose his pension if the review board decides to yank his CPA." Gramps nodded. Took a swig of soda. "And you? What did you lose?" I didn't answer right away. Finally. "Illusions." He grinned. "That all?" "That's enough." He sat back. "When your mom was 15, your granddad, my dad, sold her horse while she was at camp. Claimed it was too expensive to keep feeding an animal that didn't earn its keep. She cried for a week. Never forgave him." I raised a brow. I never heard that story. Because she spent 40 years trying not to become him. And in the end, he trailed off. Shrugged. "People don't always escape their blood." "But you did," he said, looking right at me. "You didn't cave. You stood up. You've got the kind of spine most people pretend to have. And that's gonna cost you, but it'll save you too." We sat in silence for a while. Two men, a generation apart, surrounded by socket sets and stories that hadn't yet settled. Then Gramps stood up. "You're gonna be okay, Nate." "I know." He left without another word. A week later, I took the Impala for a drive. First real one since I got it back. I didn't go far, just a loop through the hills, the kind of road that twists like a ribbon and opens up to the kind of view you wish you could bottle. I stopped at a turnout. Killed the engine. Let the ticking of the metal cooling be the only sound. For once, I didn't see the garage or the betrayal or the courtroom. I just saw the car. And me. Still here. Still whole. Still building. 2 months later, a letter showed up in my mailbox. Not an email. Not a text. A real, handwritten letter, like it was 1992 again. The return address was my parents' house, but the handwriting was Jake's. Blocky. Like he'd had to slow down just to make it legible. I stared at it for a while before I opened it. Part of me wanted to toss it straight into the burn barrel out back with the rest of the garbage I'd stopped letting into my life. But another part, smaller, stubborn, wanted to know. Inside was a single page. "Nate, I know I don't deserve your time, and I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say thank you. You did what none of us ever could. You told the truth. You stood up to Dad. You forced us all to look in the mirror. I've been in Nevada for 6 weeks now. Working full-time at a tire shop. It's humbling. Dirty. But honest. The guy who owns the place is ex-military. He doesn't care what you've done, only what you do next. I enrolled in Gamblers Anonymous. Been clean since the day I left. Haven't touched crypto, sports betting, or even a scratcher. I keep thinking about that night in the courthouse parking lot. You told me you didn't hate me, but you didn't trust me either. I'm gonna try to change that. Not by saying the right things, but by living better. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Jake." I folded the letter back up and stuck it in the drawer next to the old Impala key. Did I believe him? I didn't know. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the old anger twisting in my chest like a bad belt. People don't always deserve forgiveness. But sometimes they start to earn it. That spring, I entered the Impala into a classic car show down in Pueblo. Not to win anything. Not to show off. Just to let her breathe in public again. To let people see what I'd built. A man approached me near the judging tent. Early 50s, glasses, worn Carhartt coat. He walked slow, like every step mattered. "She yours?" he asked, eyes on the car. "She is," I said. "Hell of a restoration. Thanks." He circled the Impala like a priest walking around a casket. Then he looked at me, nodding. "You didn't just rebuild it," he said. "You resurrected it." That stuck with me. I didn't just get my car back. I got something deeper. My boundaries. My dignity. My sense of what was worth protecting. I stopped chasing apologies from people who couldn't give them. Stopped waiting for anyone to validate what I already knew. What you build with your own hands, that's yours. And when someone tries to take it, you don't fold. You fight. The workshop in my backyard has always been my sanctuary, but lately it had started to feel like more than that, like a cathedral. Sacred. Not because of what's in it, but because of what stayed out. No more phone calls. No more ambushes on the porch. No more conversations that begin with, "You've always been the responsible one." Just the rhythm of work, wrench, socket, hum of the radio, smell of gear oil and old steel. Peace, not because everything's fixed, but because I'm finally surrounded by things that don't lie. One afternoon in April, I was under the Impala replacing the rear sway bar bushings when my neighbor, Kevin, popped in. Mid-40s, used to race dirt track in the 90s, now a high school shop teacher with a limp from a bad crash in '02. He leaned on the frame of the garage like always. "She's looking mean again. She's finally breathing easy," I said. "Feels like she trusts me again." He chuckled. "Hell, man, I trust you more after all that." I slid out, sat up, wiped my hands. "You heard?" "Everyone's heard. But not everyone gets it." He paused. "My brother tried to cash out my name on a property deed back in 2014. Claimed I was unstable. I had a few DUIs. He used that to try to get power of attorney and force a sale. What happened?" Judge sided with me. "But we haven't spoken since. My mom said I was being dramatic. Said he was just trying to help." "Yeah," I muttered. "That word help, it gets weaponized." Kevin nodded like I'd handed him a wrench. "Thing is," he said, "you don't really know your family until you tell them no. That's when their true shape comes out. Like metal under paint." We talked another hour. About cars. About trust. About the things men carry that never show up in holiday pictures. And when he left, I sat there for a while, staring at the Impala. Thinking. I used to believe that building something was the hardest part. Turns out, defending it is. Not just from thieves and strangers, but from the people who think they're entitled to it because they were in the photo when you started. That's what makes this car special. Not the restoration. Not the value. But the scars underneath. It's not just my work anymore. It's my line in the sand. Spring gave way to summer, and the Impala and I started taking longer drives. Nothing fancy. No parades, no social media posts. Just asphalt, open windows, and the roar of that 427 V8 shaking loose whatever stress the week had glued to my spine. One Sunday morning, I took her out at sunrise, headed north on an empty highway through the foothills, past old barns and rusted fence lines, the kind of road that doesn't go anywhere except away. I stopped at a little gas station I hadn't been to in years. The kind with a single pump and a broken Coke machine out front. While I was filling up, a kid maybe 17 walked up. Thin. Wide-eyed. Grease smudge on his cheek. He looked at the Impala like it was a spaceship. "That yours?" he asked. "Yeah." His eyes tracked every curve. "I've only ever seen one of these in a video game. Didn't know they were real." I smiled. "They're real. Just rare." He pointed at the hood. "What's it run?" 427 big block. 4-speed Muncie. Puts out around 390 horses on a good day. The kid blinked, like I'd just spoken ancient scripture. "How much did it cost?" I paused. "More than money." He nodded like he understood, even if he didn't. "Wish my dad would help me build something like that," he said. "He doesn't think I can do anything with cars. Says I should focus on real skills." I reached into the glove box and pulled out a small ratchet I kept for roadside fixes. Handed it to him. "You ever want to learn, start with this," I said. "Don't let anyone tell you what's worth building." His eyes lit up. "Seriously?" I nodded. "Seriously." He held it like it was Excalibur. Back in the car, I sat for a moment before turning the key. That's when I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Jake. Not at Mom. Not even at Dad. I wasn't healed, not exactly. But I was whole again. Not because they apologized. Not because they changed. Because I did. Because I stopped waiting for someone else to hand me peace. I made it. With my hands. With this car. With the truth. Mid-July, I got a certified letter. No name on the envelope. Just a P.O. box return address in Boise, Idaho. Inside? A check. $5,000. And a note, written on yellow-lined paper in uneven handwriting. It's not enough. But it's a start. Jake. No apology this time. No plea for contact. Just money. Earned, maybe? Honest, hopefully. A quiet attempt at accountability. I set the check on the workbench and stared at it. $5,000 won't fix betrayal. It won't rewind the nights I laid awake in that cold panic, wondering how far down this family would drag me. But it meant something. Because for once, Jake wasn't asking to be rescued. He was paying something back. I didn't cash it. Not yet. Maybe I never will. But I kept it, taped it to the inside of my shop cabinet next to the wiring diagram for the Impala and a faded photo of me at 29, standing next to the chassis on a rainy afternoon when it was just a stripped frame and a dream. The shop had grown since then. I added shelves. A parts bin wall. Even upgraded to a better lift. And without quite meaning to, I started helping other people. First, it was Kevin's niece, college kid with a busted Corolla who'd been quoted $2,000 for a new alternator she didn't need. I replaced the belt for $20 and a cup of diner coffee. Then it was Marlon, an old Vietnam vet who couldn't get his F-150 to pass emissions. We spent a weekend tearing down the exhaust system together. The man hadn't smiled like that in 10 years. The shop started to feel bigger. Not physically. Spiritually. People would drop by on Saturdays. Ask questions. Lend hands. It wasn't a business, and I didn't want it to be. It was something better. A space where hard work and truth held more weight than legacy or blood. Where no one expected you to give more than you could afford. Where no one thought family was a hall pass for trespass. One morning, Gramps showed up again, this time with a flatbed trailer behind his truck. I raised an eyebrow as he backed it up into the driveway and dropped the ramp. On the trailer sat a 1955 Chevy Task Force pickup, two-tone white and turquoise, hood half off, fender held on with duct tape and hope. He didn't say anything at first. Just walked over and opened the passenger door of the truck. Inside was a folded-up sign. Project Free to a Good Home. I was gonna scrap it, he finally said. But then I thought maybe it still has a second life in it. I stared at the truck. I could already see the paint stripped, the lines straightened, the engine bay restored. You want help rebuilding it? I asked. No, he said. I want you to. Then he grinned. But I'll supervise and tell you you're doing it wrong. We both laughed. It felt good. Not forced. Not hollow. Just earned. It's late summer now. The sun dips slower behind the mountains, and the nights carry just enough chill to make you notice the seasons shifting. The garage doors are open, the radio's low, and the 55 Chevy Task Force sits halfway through its resurrection, engine pulled, frame sandblasted, a fresh coat of epoxy primer catching the last gold light of the day. Gramps is here again, leaning in a lawn chair with a sweet tea and a permanent smirk, heckling me every time I drop a socket. You call that torque? My mother could tighten that better with arthritis. I shake my head and laugh because I finally get it. Not just the joke, but the gift. This is what rebuilding looks like. Not just metal. Me. The Impala's parked in the corner. Covered, polished, untouched now for weeks. It served its purpose. It reminded me of who I am, and what I won't let be taken again. Sometimes I think about Dad. Wonder if he drives by the shop and parks just far enough away not to be seen. I doubt he ever will. Men like him don't come back empty-handed, and he's got nothing left in the tank. Jake sends a text once a month now. Short. Simple. Real. Last week it just said, still clean. Got a raise. You'd like my boss. Real hard ass. I didn't reply. I just smiled. Mom hasn't tried again. I think the silence finally settled into her bones like winter cold. She raised a man who wouldn't be used. That's something she'll either mourn or respect. Either way, it's not my burden. I built this life with my own hands. And for once, there's no one standing behind me waiting to take it. I close up the garage, switch off the lights, and step outside into the cooling air. The cabin is warm. The land is quiet. The sky is clean and massive overhead. And in this stillness, I finally understand what the Impala was never meant to be. A prize. It was a boundary line. A firebreak. It was the last thing they'd ever take from me. And the first thing I took back. Not because I had to. but because I could.